Tropical Storm Fiona has formed in the Atlantic and is moving westbound. Fiona, like the princess in Shrek. I'm 5 News Chief Meteorologist Matt Standards. Just massive thunderstorms has been reevaluated by some satellite data. Winds now estimated to be around 50 miles per hour. Once the storm gets a little bit closer towards North America, eventually Hurricane Hunter crews will go out and do some reconnaissance on this storm to get official data and official numbers out of this storm. But right now, this has gone from a depression to a tropical storm because of those wind speeds. The tropical storm threshold is at 39 miles per hour. We're above that. We're estimating 50-mile-per-hour winds. This storm is moving westbound, now currently at 14 miles per hour. Eventually, it will start to slow down just a little bit as it nears some of the islands in the Caribbean. So when you look a little bit closer, all these dots, these are the islands of the Lesser Antilles, and then you head into Puerto Rico, San Juan, and towards the Greater Antilles, and eventually towards Florida, the United States, and Gulf of Mexico. Things we're a little bit more familiar with. The landmass towards the south is the South American continent. But these thunderstorms continue to strengthen and organize as the storm is moving westbound. However, there are a couple things in the way of this storm as we're trying to predict its future wind speeds. We've got some dry air and some winds. We're going to talk about that and how that's going to impact this forecast. But right now, there's a lot of warm water as you look westbound into the Caribbean. So we're heading right into peak hurricane season. We've actually just hit peak hurricane season, and this is our next tropical storm as it moves westbound. However, over the next several days, eventually it may start to make more of a northerly tilt. We're still not sure exactly how far north and how much of the turn it's going to take. Eventually, this front, you see all these clouds over Florida and just off the coast of the United States along the eastern seaboard. There's a front right here that's kind of dragging into parts of the Gulf of Mexico. So what happens is as this storm moves westbound, eventually it may start to collide a little bit with this front, and it may eventually try to turn a little bit farther north. But we're not exactly sure if it's going to swing way out or eventually get closer to land. We still have several days to work on this. This track that you see only goes through this weekend into the start of next week. This line right here, this shows you the forecast. We're expecting that Tropical Storm Fiona, to be by this coming Monday. So we still have 5 days out. Even just trying to get the storm closer to Cuba, parts of the Bahamas. Overall, though, there's a lot of warm water with this system. So from the storm's perspective, that's a plus. However, there are some minuses, which, of course, good news for us, good news for anyone in the Caribbean. There's a lot of dry air, and there's a lot of wind shear. There's a lot of just upper-level winds. And usually hurricanes like to produce winds, but they don't like to be influenced by other storms. They like to just have clear, open water for them to just sail right through and strengthen. But it looks like right now over Puerto Rico, over the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and as you head towards Cuba and eventually Jamaica, there's a lot of dry air sitting around, and there's some wind. So as this storm moves west, it's already strengthened more than originally predicted, but as this storm moves west, as it gets closer to some of these islands, it may have some limiting factors. So when we take a look closer to this track, we've got tropical storm predictions for now staying around 45 miles per hour. So we've already gone past 45, but it may have a hard time strengthening as of right now because of some of that dry air, which is some good news. But the question is, if it continued to move west, and once it gets out of that pocket of dry air that's sitting over Cuba and parts of the Dominican and San Juan and Puerto Rico and some of these Lesser Antilles, what happens after that? That's a big question. That's still far off in the future. Well, you need to know for probably the next 7 days. So as we approach this weekend, no tropical weather making impact towards the United States. But eventually this storm, Fiona, will have to be something that we watch. Will it move into the Gulf? Not sure. Way too far out. Will it swing well off into the Atlantic? Still not sure. Several things to watch. But that pocket of dry air is some good news as the storm presses westbound. Let's take a look at futurecasts and future tropical development over the next several days. So this mass of clouds and showers that is off towards the east, this is Fiona. And as we progress the forecast towards the weekend, it's just moving due west, 10 to 20 miles per hour. Taking its time. The question is, once it gets closer to these islands with some dry air higher up in the atmosphere, where does it go from here? That's where we'll have to see. There are some early indications that there may be more of a favor for it to make a hard right turn, and it's all thanks to that front. You see all these showers and thunderstorms still kind of hanging around Florida. That's that boundary that we've been talking about. It's kind of produces a tropical wall. Storms don't like to hit those and press on through. A lot of times they struggle pressing on through. A lot of times they hit the wall, and then they got to bounce around. So they may move east, hit some of this storm activity, and then eventually bend off towards the north and east over time. But tropical storm Fiona is now on the move. Westbound, it is peak hurricane season. We'll continue to watch the tropics. Maybe you're headed off towards the Gulf Coast the next several days or the Atlantic coast. You want to keep your eye on this storm as it moves west.